Hi, this is Nick Jain, CEO of IdeaScale. Today we are having another great episode of Chief Innovation Officer Fireside Chats. Today's guest is Scot, the City of Burlington's Chief Innovation Officer in Vermont. With a career spanning North Country Federal Credit Union, My Web Grocer, and other tech companies, he's led impactful teams, driven operational improvements, and championed community involvement. Scot serves on the board of Technology for Tomorrow. Welcome, Scot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as we kind of mentioned before the call started, my family has deep ties to Burlington, so really excited to have you on the show today. My wife and her in-laws are all from there, and we go back quite often. So really excited to hear about how Burlington's innovating. Yeah. First question, just jumping right into it. What unique challenges and opportunities do you see in driving innovation in a city like Burlington?
The challenge from the challenging side, it's interesting because I talk a little bit about it in other areas about kind of the democratization of technology. And by that, I mean technology is so ubiquitous and so it touches every aspect of everybody's lives these days. And so people in tiny little Burlington think that Burlington should have the same level of IT technology, IT sophistication maybe as a New York City or Washington, D.C. And a lot of those systems are just out of the affordability range for a city the size of Burlington. So in fact, I was at a conference a few weeks ago where Mexico City doesn't even buy software off the shelf because they have 100 people in their development group in the city of Mexico. So in the city government. So, it ranges from we can develop everything to we have to buy everything. So that's kind of one of the challenges. From an opportunity perspective, though, it means that there's always room for us to do innovative things with new systems and try to bring a more accessible, equitable approach to everything that we're doing. Whether that's from bringing it digital first. I always joke with the mayor, I'm not trying to close City Hall. I swear you'll always still be able to come into City Hall. But there's a lot of reasons why a digital first approach to permitting or paying bills or whatever the case may be is a huge piece of the puzzle and brings kind of the services that the city would provide a little bit more of an accessible, equitable approach. And, that's the direction that we're trying to go from the city of Burlington.
So it's funny, so I live in Philadelphia now, right? And they, over the past 4 or 5 years, have made a huge push towards digitizing a lot of city services. So filling out forms, things like that. And again, it's not as fancy as, candidly, it's not as fancy as a UX as you would get from private sector software. But the great thing is it works. It means that I don't have to go in to City Hall on a work day to try and fill out a water utility form, which I have the luxury of doing that because I work a flexible job, but many, many people don't, right? And so creating technology service like that is hugely, speaking as a consumer, is incredibly useful.
Yeah, I guess it was it happened, it rolled over to the digital permitting process maybe a year or so before I got to the city. And I've lived in Burlington for 28 years. So what used to be, I need a permit to do something on my house. So we used to joke, you have to go down to the permitting office. They may or may not have parking. And they have permit people that are there to talk to you every other lunar Tuesday from 9 to 9:05 a.m. Because that's what it felt like. You were there, you were queuing up, there were all kinds of people. And so when we rolled it over to the digital side, there was a lot of, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth because we changed some things. But it really also opened it up to a much more convenient. You can apply for or your contractor, your subcontractors, whatever. They can apply for a permit at 2 a.m. if that suits them because it's all online now. So to your point, that's exactly what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to bring a little bit more accessibility to the government services that everybody has to make use of.
One quick tactical question there. You'd mentioned Mexico City. They were kind of just building their own software because they have, a huge developer population.
Yeah.
But within the United States, again, let's ignore the mega cities, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston. But for kind of mid-sized cities, let's say Burlington, Philadelphia, where I live, are you guys each building your own technical infrastructure, or is there a shared infrastructure where Philadelphia and Burlington use the exact same piece of software, just changing the logo at the top?
Well, first, I will tell you, I appreciate the fact that you're comparing Burlington and Philadelphia. I think that's great because I don't think we're even close to being. If you think Philadelphia is a mid-sized city, then we are definitely not a mid-sized city. But no, I think probably what is happening, certainly at a certain tier of municipality, is that we're buying stuff from vendors. So it may be OpenGov, it may be Civic Plus, it may be Tyler Technologies, maybe Oracle or NetSuite. We're certainly not developing it on our own. I have one software developer on my staff. He is a software engineer, but most of the things that he does has to do with how do I make that system talk to this system over here, move the money, move the fields, move the information so that we can, from our payroll system, move that into our ERP. He's doing stuff like that. He's not out there creating a brand new digital permitting system. We're buying that off the shelf. And there are certainly vendors that focus on municipal work. We just rolled our website, for instance, to one of those, that they focus specifically on making municipal websites. And kind of to your point, you're right. It's not the UX that you would expect from a private entity who is, making all kinds of whiz bang videos and everything else on their website. We're trying to deliver information to the citizens of the community that, information they need, questions that they may have. How do we get those answered? They're not looking for wow graphics. They're not looking for, 15-minute videos. They're looking for how do I register my dog and can you get me there? That type of thing.
No, and I, again, speaking only as an end consumer here, yes, kind of, I wish the UX was a little bit better on some of the, the city services. But this is, by the way, it was true when I was living in New York City too. I wish the UX was better. But the key thing was, could I file, whatever form I needed to? Could I get whatever permit I needed to without going and standing in line at XYZ location?
Yeah.
And if that happens, that's great. Again, and I want to reiterate that I'm in the luxurious position where I can take 2 hours off in the middle of the day. Many people, Americans, can't. Right? They have family obligations, work obligations. They have in-presence jobs, healthcare issues, mobility, accessibility issues. So technology is wonderful that I can do that. And,
right, exactly.
So the next question it sounds like you're tackling these challenges. There's some good stuff going on. One of the things you said you wanted to touch on was cybersecurity. Like, why does that matter and what are you doing about it? And I'm asking kind of tongue in cheek, but I run a tech company. Security matters a lot to us.
Sure.
But candidly, like, why does it matter to city governments or municipal governments? And what are you guys doing about it?
Well, I think it's the answer to that. Why does it matter is kind of twofold. One is, as you can imagine, as anybody who's listening, they probably live in some sort of a community. We have copious amounts of private information. We have people's addresses, phone numbers, socials, credit cards, everything. Because of how you interact with the government at various levels, that government has all that stuff. So, cybersecurity is important because of the PII that we hold for the community. The flip side is, as a rule, municipalities are one of the softer targets out there. I mean, we're certainly not in the defense industry. We're not in some of the cyber industries, or the online industries. So municipalities are oftentimes considered soft targets. And as we all know, the bad guys are always faster and always better funded than the good guys. So we're constantly working with, we have multiple vendors that we work with. We have people on staff that are committed, dedicated. All they do is cybersecurity stuff. And so it's a huge piece of what we do in the innovation and technology world here. And I look, it's probably no different at any other municipality or state or even federal levels. Cybersecurity is one of the top challenges. I mean, and top concerns. I joke with people all the time. If you ever talk to a CIO and say, what keeps you up at night? And that CIO doesn't have cybersecurity as one in all but rare circumstances too, then you probably ought to fire that CIO, because that's literally what keeps me up at night is, are we doing enough to protect the data and the information that the city holds, both on the city, but also on the community?
Yeah. So, just one, so I run a private sector tech company. And one of the funny things that we've done in a good way, right? So I'm the CEO of the company. You can steal my phone. You can steal my laptop. You can compromise all my devices. You can't compromise their systems because we've made it that no matter how senior or how powerful the person is, they don't have all the access rights,
Right.
right? And if I get locked out of my Slack, I have to physically call and verify a system operations person so that no one can pretend to be me and gain access to my internal communications,
Right.
all sorts
Right.
of checks, because you never want that compromise. And I don't even have it often a sense. I don't have PII on my platform, right? And we still do that because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mean, you have to keep in mind that you may not have information, PII information in your world, but if they can get into your world and there's a door open to one of the other connections that you have, then they're in there. We talk about it here. This is, if you can get access to something in the city, then what level of state or federal access would you have access to as well? And so, because it's all pathways.
Yeah, you build a mosaic of somebody's identity, then you call up their bank, their dog's name because the dog was registered with the city, whatever it is, right? And that's
exactly.
their
It's kind of
secret
crazy. So cyber is at the top of all of our minds all the time. Yes.
word. Cool. So the next question is kind of a broad-based one. So I run an innovation company, and innovation can be both technological, it can be process, it can be stuff, right? It can be a new park or a new city plan. What is one cool innovation that the city of Burlington is doing? That, again, it could be a technology, it could be a new city plan that you think makes a difference to your citizens, or your citizens being the wrong word, your residents?
Oh man, there is so much that's going on from
what gets you excited of all the stuff you guys are working on? Let's talk about that. What's one project, innovation, something new you guys are doing that gets you excited?
That gets me excited? I think what gets me excited is the opportunity to really look at all of the systems that we have that face the public and figure out how can we make those more usable, more accessible, more equitable. You and I were talking right before we started the conversation that Burlington's expensive to live in. And so, but that does not, just like New York or any other place, it does not mean that there aren't people who are, not everybody lives in Burlington, has the means to live in Burlington sometimes. And so, there's accessibility issues from high-speed networks to, whether or not they have visual challenges, auditory challenges, something like that. So what are we doing across all of our systems? We just rolled our new website to a new host. And one of the reasons we did it was because we were going to not only modernize the back end, but bring a much more accessible website to the people of Burlington. And so there's all kinds of new accessibility tools that we couldn't put on the old one because the back end wouldn't support it. So it's things like that really, I think, keep us going. The nice thing about what I do is I work with 18 departments, and I work from an innovation perspective. I tell people that if all the innovation has to come from me, we're probably in a heap of trouble. Partly because I don't know if I'm creative enough to be that innovative, but also because innovation is by its nature a collaborative process. So what does my team do to assist the 18 other departments in being more innovative? How can we help them make sure that they've got the right tools, the right technology, the right processes, the right project management, whatever that may be? How do we help them deliver more innovative solutions to the community? And that is really where our sweet spot is in terms of us having fun, is making sure that those other 18 departments have what they need to get the job done more innovatively.
Let me dovetail off something you said. You kind of jokingly said, if all the creativity has to come from you, you're kind of screwed. Okay. I'm paraphrasing there.
Yeah.
Okay. So Burlington's got, 50 odd thousand people living there.
45.
Yeah.
000, yeah.
How are you bringing that community how are you involving them in, suggesting ideas or driving what you guys are doing? So it's not coming out of your head or the
I would say first and foremost, you should talk to your in-laws about just how much voice the people in Burlington have, because of all the places I've been and lived, there's probably no community that has a bigger voice in how things get done in the community than the people in Burlington. And in general, writ larger is probably the people of Vermont.
Let me ask, how is that a cultural thing? Is that
It's a cultural thing? Yeah. So we have 39 or 40 boards and commissions, not including city council, not including board of finance, that are the airport commission, the city arts commission. I mean, just you name it, some aspect of city government has a commission, and that commission is made up entirely of community members. There's typically a city councilor who kind of runs it, and there's typically a representative from the government who sits on that commission as well. But it's a very, very inclusive, very communicative approach to how all of this stuff gets taken care of, and how it's suggested. We're starting to explore the idea of participatory budgeting, where there may be some sections of the budget that actually go to the public in a different way than the budget traditionally goes to the public. So, there is a ton of engagement with the community. If you think bureaucracy is slow without that, we can really slow things down with that sometimes, because you do work to find some level of consent and or consensus in terms of moving forward with certain things. Absolutely.
There's that old joke that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others.
Except for all the others.
As much as people complain about bureaucracy, private sector obviously has that advantage, but the good news is, democracy generally results in a, better quality of life for citizens than many, the other forms of government we've tried.
Bureaucracy and cybersecurity have a lot in common. They are both designed not to make things faster. They're both designed to make sure you don't do boneheaded things really fast.
No, 100% agree. Like, we've unfortunately seen a lot of examples in history where, strong leaders came to power and did things that, were not long-term, good for their respective nations and caused wars and all sorts of horrible things.
Exactly.
Cool. So my last question is, look, you've got this title, Chief Innovation Officer. What have you personally learned about innovation in the public sector that would surprise our listeners?
Oh, wow. I think for me, and I don't know if it was a surprise to me as much as it is you really have to make sure that you're defining it. And that is, when people think about innovation, they think about the big idea, the huge, this has never been done. It's going to be this grandiose thing. Sometimes innovation is kind of boring. Innovation oftentimes is, what are we doing today and how can we do it better tomorrow? So, for instance, there's not a ton of innovation you can do in the permitting process for a new building, for instance. And it's, you still have certain boxes that you need to check. Did we think about the water? Did we think about the electricity? Did we think about the street? You had to get all that stuff done. So how do you innovate around it? And one of the ways we did that was, and other cities, you were talking about it in Philadelphia, going from that paper-based to a digital approach. Oftentimes that is sometimes the extent of the innovation, but it is immensely impactful for the people who are interacting with it. So I try to keep in mind that innovation doesn't always have to be the big new thing. It can be just make what you're doing incrementally better. And so I think about that as I walk into City Hall every day, is that everything we do in City Hall, everything my innovation and technology team does, how are we making something incrementally better for either employees of the city or community members? And because that's our innovation, that's where it comes from. And I think that's a surprise to a lot of people, because they look at cities and they say, well, you're not innovating. And then you go back and you say, except we did this, this, and this, and it's way easier for you now. Oh, okay. So I don't consider that innovation, because it's not the big, grand, cool thing, right?
So a funny analogy to that from software land. Yes, we launch big features every now and then, right? And I'm speaking, this is true for any well-run software company. But like, about a large proportion of efforts are what we call quality of life issues. It's like slightly change this button, make it a little bit more accessible, make it a little bit more intuitive. no one ever notices it, but then you compare it to a version of the software like 5 years ago, and it's like, wow, this is a lot easier to use.
Right, exactly.
It's unnoticeable, but it makes a difference. And there's just lots of little tiny changes that we're making. And it's a core part of like any well-run software companies like
Right.
development process, make these small changes that no one ever thanks you for,
Right.
but it makes a difference.
Exactly.
They don't even notice.
There's not, well, sometimes innovation is unnoticeable. You just have a sense that that seemed easier than it used to.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So perfect. I have no more questions for you. Is there anything you would have wanted to talk about, or you want to get on a soapbox for a second, talk about, innovation?
No, I have plenty of opportunities to hop on my soapbox. I think I'm good.
Yes, with all your 50 committees.
Exactly.
Perfect, Scott. Thank you so much for your time. Again, Scott's the Chief Innovation Officer for the city of Burlington, Vermont. Thank you again, Scott, for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having me, Nick. It was great.